who's standing by for an interview with EnVy's AD carry.
Thanks, guys. I'm here with Lot, and you guys have had a hell of a start to this split. You talked about wanting to prove yourself. Obviously, there's a lot more games to play, but how does it feel to have this kind of a start in the LCS?
It feels great. I mean, we didn't get to boot camp in Korea or anything. We kind of got together as a team like a week or two before the split started, and we haven't had much time to like synergize and stuff, but I think we're doing really good so far, so I'm really happy.
Yeah, so Seraph has talked a lot about like how happy he is with this roster, how happy he is with the team. It seems like you guys are getting along really, really well. What do you think has been the biggest key to your success so far?
I think just everybody on the team is like mechanically extremely good, and we all just know exactly what we need to do. I feel like I can trust every single one of my teammates in every game. Even if I'm picking like a losing lane, I can trust the rest of the map to do well. So I think just everybody is really proficient.
Awesome. So talking a little bit about the mid-season changes, what do you think is the hardest thing to adapt to for pro teams with this change? Do you think it's the Dragon change? Do you think it's all the new champions, new items? What has it been for you and your team?
I think just the biggest thing was like the Dragon changes. You know, you have to choose whether you like prioritize Dragons or prioritize Herald. Herald kind of got changed a lot, so it's more of like a split pushing objective, and you have to sacrifice a lot to get it. Like we even died taking it that game, you know. And there's times where like, you know, normally you would just say like don't fight until second or third dragon, but if there's like 2 Infernal Dragons in a row, you kind of are forced to fight. So you really have to just be good at adapting in game, depending on which dragon spawn.
Do you think that leads you to wanting to draft more like early game team fighting type comps?
Yeah, I would say definitely. It's a lot more helpful to have like a strong early game comp because you want to be ready to contest like almost every single dragon. You know, it might be a wind dragon, it might be fire, like you just never know. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and congratulations once again. A great start here for EnVy. Can't wait to see what they're going to do with the rest of the split. Back to you guys at the desk. Dash.
Thank you very much, Azael. I want to just jump on and piggyback onto that last question there about the toughest changes for the teams to adapt to, and for EnVy specifically, they're looking at the Dragons. And we've had a lot of discussion around Dragons and dealing with kind of that RNG factor. How do we know, or how are we prepared to fight for whatever Dragon might show up? And earlier today, we had an example of a team gifted Infernal Drakes. Great, we're getting a ton of combat stats, a ton of combat stats. Here, though, we get the complete opposite. We've got a team that has a pretty solid lead in the beginning, and if they had gotten 3 Infernal Drakes in a row, probably would have had the easiest of times closing out that game. Instead, 2 Oceans followed by 2 Cloud Drakes, and all of a sudden they're like, where are our combat stats? Please, let us, even Mountains, we'll take Mountains. Let us push turns down.
They're running this extremely bursty comp with like Lysandra Graves cast, and they're trying to delete somebody, and it's like, oh man, that Cloud Drake
but we got
topping me off.
Yeah, we can chase them down with this Cloud Drake with all of our gap closers.
As long as Ezreal doesn't Q us.
Yeah. No,
we got Ocean to sustain the Ezreal poke.
You know, it's a very interesting thing. I think we'll see how the discussion develops over the coming weeks as the teams themselves figure it out, because it does seem that there's still even a little bit of uncertainty around, like, how do we craft comps that will be able to compete for these Dragons in the early and mid games, because we don't know which ones will show up.
Exactly. The way he said it there was like, you know, you kind of have to take something that's at least competent in the early mid game, because you can't afford to risk running into a situation where it's just Infernal, Earth, or something like that, and you're so far behind in terms of like the free stats. And it was kind of the case here where, like, you know, EnVy's comp is ready to go probably by like that second dragon. Luckily, they got an advantage. Not luckily, they got an advantage in the early game, and so they were able to grab all of them, but they didn't get any help from the dragon. The dragon was not pulling its weight.
Right.
I think one of the most consistent things you can rely on is, regardless of if you get the worst dragons ever, the one thing you can rely on is when that Elder Drake comes around, regardless of how bad the buffs could be or how good they could be, if you can build up towards that Elder Drake, you can just mow down everything after that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, we can't forget the fact that they were holding on to 4 Drakes, and so if they did secure Elder Dragon to follow that, again, that's an insane amount of damage that they're afforded now in any poke opportunity, in any team fight opportunity.
And like we're kind of underplaying the value of some of these dragons. So like the Ocean one, if you're in they don't have a tank in that comp. If they're trying to do anything around Baron and they take some damage, it's going to be immensely useful there, because they get healed up, whereas normally you might have a tank who can just be like, it doesn't hurt me that bad. But here, squishier team, the heal will help.
Right. This is to say, Dragons weren't the only way that EnVy ended up taking this series 2-0 over Team Liquid. I do want to dive into this game a little bit specifically, though, and talk about the early kills that went over to Kassadin. We have a replay of that. We're going to dive right into it, but 2 kills going over to Kassadin, as well as 1 over onto that Lissandra for Seraph. I mean, this just kind of set EnVy up to make any moves around the map they wanted to after this fight.
This is an instance where they had a really good engage by map, but they split targets. The Kindred went on the Zyra, and then Phoenix missed some of his damage on the Lucian, so he ends up living through the Kindred ult, and then they get just chased down and killed. And I know this is something Dyrus wanted to talk about, because even if they got that initial kill, it wasn't going to turn out well.
Right, so even if you got that initial kill, it was a nice engage by Matt, but it was the timing of where the side waves are. The way I believe the game should be played is off of side lanes. For example, Lorlo was pushed in there. Even if they got something good off of that, they would still get chased down by Kassadin and Lissandra.
Right.
And the lane would be slowly pushing towards Lissandra. And once Lissandra's done fighting, he goes back to the top lane, gets all this farm. And it happened twice that game, where it's like, all right, I'm going to TP when all this farm is at my tower, try to fight. And if we lose, we're screwed. But if we win, we're still like kind of even.
Right, exactly. Yeah, even if you win, you're still losing a bunch of CS to the turret, so you're not necessarily giving yourselves too many opportunities to come out in the black, in the positive.
Yeah, I mean, it was not just that example too. It was over the course of both games, you saw these kind of questionable decisions where, you know, at one point they were contesting a dragon. It wasn't a very important dragon. They have no Kindred ult, and they have a wave pushed into them top. Just deal with your waves. It's another Cloud Drake. All right, you just have to worry about the Infernals now. And they just picked. They tried to go to the dragon, and they tried to go up mid, and
Yeah, like just decide on one decisive thing, and that's it. They could have went down mid, had Lorlo go top, maybe get the tower, and then get out. Because during that time, they didn't have Kindred ult.
Let's take a look at Team Liquid a little bit, because we did have some questions around how the roster move would affect them coming into today. I mean, you lose Dardoch, one of the best early game junglers in the league. Last split, you replace him with Moon. You know, not to say the Moon didn't make appearances around the map, but as a whole, the team seemed a lot more disjointed. Definitely didn't seem to be, as you mentioned, just in that replay, the fact that they split focus and realizing that that has nothing to do with Moon necessarily. I mean, Matt making the initiation, but still disjointed, not really operating on the same page, whereas EnVy looks a lot more like a well-oiled machine.
I think Moon performed fine in the laning phase. I think he picked up both, or was involved in both First Bloods, and they were off like, you know, pretty aggressive ganks, and they looked fine there. But once the team transitioned into this like group decision making, you could see that they were just not on the same page. And I wouldn't say, you know, Dardoch was like the main shot caller of that team, but he was very vocal in what he wanted to do, and I think they lost some direction with him.
Yeah, once it got to mid-game, I wasn't sure what they wanted to do. It was just not playing the map as well as EnVy.
Yeah, so definitely going to have some work to do on that, at least makeshift roster for now. Back over to EnVy, though, I want to close out our thoughts on them and this series. They now move to 2-0 in the split, given that they played Energy yesterday. I do think that we might have to temper expectation a little bit, given the fact that their wins come over Energy, a very clearly struggling Energy, and Team Liquid, who is hurting for their main starters. So your thoughts, your final thoughts on EnVy as a team as they make their debut here in the LCS?
They definitely exceeded expectations, but the true test will be when they play against C9, Immortal, CLG, and finally TSM.
Yeah, raid boss TSM at this point.
Yeah, I think they are very clearly individually talented and they have good teamwork. The question is what happens when they match up against people who are also, you know, in their element. So those, like you said, top teams, and if they'll get outclassed.
And the player leading the charge, who also receives our player of the game for the series yet again, Seraph is going to take this one. I mean, that guy has just been an absolute monster for the team so far in the few games that we've seen on that Lissandra. Again, not afraid to make plays. He has those very unique champion picks as well that he can pull out at any time. So really, his pool has been expansive. His play style has been expansive. He's been a leader and a shot caller for the team. Just a well-rounded player to kind of head up this EnVy roster.
Yeah, I think he's definitely been the most explosive player for them. He's usually the one who's kind of leading the charge in his engages. He's getting a lot of leads on his own in certain matchups. You know, yesterday against Kwasi he did very well. So he's definitely a player to keep your eye on. Pick him up in your fantasy leagues if you haven't.
Yeah, I'm extremely impressed with how Seraph is playing, because if you compare him to back then to now, he's just a complete monster.
Totally different player.
Yeah, he's just like, I wouldn't be able to tell you that that's the same person from today. Like if I told you back then, it's like in 3 years, this kid is going to be a monster. He's going to crush everyone. He's going to prove everyone wrong, and he's going to get in your face and maybe not shake your hand for DMing, but something like that.
But I'm very happy to see that he has grown to such a great degree. Well, with that, after 2 days of LCS action, the standings are starting to take shape. Leading the pack, we have Team EnVy alone in first place, with Apex, Echo Fox, and TSM tied for second. Immortals is in 5th with Cloud9 right behind in 6th. Counterlogic Gaming is tied for 7th with Phoenix 1 and Liquid following behind. And with them all. And then Energy lands at the bottom with that 0-2 of the standings. Now, we still have one more day of LCS action headed your way with 4 more series tomorrow afternoon. Be sure to tune in to NALCS 1 to see Apex face off against Counterlogic Gaming, followed by Echo Fox versus Cloud9. Over on NALCS 2, TSM will get a shot against Liquid just before Phoenix 1 takes on Immortal. So, gentlemen, with these games in mind, what are we looking forward to tomorrow? We've got plenty of fun ones on the docket.
I want to see CLG play again. I think they didn't look that great versus TSM. I don't think that's, very indicative of their skill level overall. They might be having a little bit of a, post-MSI hangover where a lot of teams took some time off and then hit the ground running. They kind of did it reverse where they worked really hard, kept working, and then had a break. So I think seeing them, hopefully they get a win at some point because I think they're a lot better than they showed.
Particular team that you're looking forward to looking?
Personally, I'm looking forward to every single team because best of 3 format just seems so fun. And as for CLG, it did show that it felt like that they were less hungry because they've already got second at MSI. They beat TSM, and all the other teams went to Korean boot camp, so giving them the benefit of the doubt there.
Yeah, well, perhaps the loss yesterday will kind of reignite that fire and they'll come back swinging tomorrow. I'm kind of with you. I'm excited to see all of the games, mostly because I want to see how the standings begin to shake out and we get more like relative strength of teams, because it's very hard to tell right now when you've got Cloud9 playing Immortals and then you've got, some of the newer teams playing makeshift rosters. And so where does everyone actually stand? We'll be excited to see how all that plays out. That's going to wrap up our show today. I'd like to extend let me start over. That's going to wrap up our show today. I'd like to extend a special thank you to our guests, analysts, Mark and Dyrus. And on behalf of myself, the casters, and the entire live broadcast crew, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you mañana.
Teams are getting ready to lock in their champion selections. As we get into game, the battle arena is on fire and we're ready to get in. Hey, with his distortion, that's the quadra kill for Jensen. Nice. Brought you back.
Oh, yes, sir. Awesome. Good job.
KFO goes off in the back end of that game.
If you're still one of the top at what you do, you should just keep doing it.
Dubar is Dunzo, maybe. Oh, gets a stun. Oh my gosh, you're kidding me. He lives. They give him so much respect. Meteos with the smite down on Elder. The Chaos Storm coming out of Pobelter gives him the double kill, looking for Meteos on the triple. And Immortals will take down Cloud9 for their first series of the summer split. Whether it's Q-Kid, wow.
That process of knockups there as well. OQ's going to die. Apex in their first series of the LCS come out with a 2-0 win.
Orlo, it goes too deep. He's going to pay the price, and Matt drops.
No one claws down. Oh, it flashed, and they still got him.
Finish it. Nice.
I can injure you. Yeah, injure. We got Baron. Nice.
Dominating performance from EnVy, undefeated in week 1 of the North American LCS.